order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, some new business here. I'd like a motion to approve an agreement between North Colony and Hillcrest. Mrs. Albert?
I make a motion to approve the agreement by and between the North Colony Central School District and Hillcrest Educational Centers, Inc. for placement of students as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you. And a second, Mrs. Darnolillo, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. I'd like a motion to approve the notice of annual election and budget vote. Mr. Johnson?
I move to approve the notice of annual election and budget vote as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thank you. And a second, Mrs. Nardolillo. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. I'd like a motion to enter into an open session of the Budget Committee. Mrs. Nardolillo. And a second, Mr. Koprowski. And all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. And we're ready. Would you like to begin, Ms. Gill?
Sure. So tonight we're going to do a final review of the budget, including our anticipated revenues, our projected expenditures, as well as the proposed tax levy. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Howard, who will take you through our financial information.
Thank you, Superintendent Steele. Good evening, everyone. Tonight really serves as a recap of the work that we've been engaged in over the last several months. We feel very confident that the budget we're proposing to you tonight and to the voters in May is a responsible one, and I just really wanted to thank the administrators and the staff here at North Colony for being very responsible and thoughtful about the proposals that they made throughout the process this year. There are still a lot of unknowns. As you know, the New York State budget has not been approved yet, so we're still working with anticipated projected state numbers. We're carrying conservative numbers, so we always hope that those numbers increase a little bit, but we are confident that the numbers that we are proposing puts us in a good position to continue to move forward. So the proposed budget this year is coming in at $155,230,502. That represents a 0.74% budget to budget increase, which is about an increase of $1.14 million. Over the course of the last few budget meetings, you have heard about the staffing proposals that have been made for the district for next year and some new programming. So some of those increases we were able to absorb through savings with breakage perhaps in retirements of existing staff members and then bringing on new staff members. But also just really taking a close look at the existing services that the district provides and making sure that we're maximizing on the intentional programming for our students here at North Colony. Just like we're all experiencing in our personal spending in this economy and in this climate, there are some major factors influencing the budget increase this year. They are listed on the screen. We've been engaging in some long-range forecasting regarding potential contract settlements and related retirement costs for the bargaining units within the North Colony Central School District. So those conditions are represented in this year's budget. Health insurance costs do continue to go up. The increasing cost of specialty medications is the major factor that we're seeing in health insurance cost increases. Liability insurance costs are up about 9% for North Colony this year. Last year, we didn't receive this number until after the budget was already approved. So we didn't get to include any potential increases that we were going to see, but we were able to absorb them this year. Electricity and natural gas costs are up. That is a conservative amount, that 15%. You do recall that we are engaging in that solar, community solar agreement this year that will help us save a little bit of money, but every little bit counts. So this is something that Brian Kraft and his staff are also dealing with from the standpoint of replacing some boilers in some of the other buildings in the district. So we did Latham Ridge this year, and we're just now starting to see that data come in where pretty soon we'll be able to provide you with some information about what kind of savings we're experiencing with those more efficient infrastructure products. And of course, the impact of tariffs. Julie Scriven talked a lot about that when she presented her instructional technology budget to you. There were a lot of quotes that we already had in hand, and now vendors are saying, we can't necessarily come through or honor that quote, we may have to re-quote it. If we were purchasing, perhaps 50 ViewSonic TVs for classrooms, we might have to pull that number back a little bit and only purchase 25 or 30. So we'll definitely make responsible decisions when it comes to that. And then we have adjusted down the potential interest earnings for next year, considering potential market volatility. Over the course of the last 3 years, it has fluctuated in a way that hasn't really allowed us to predict with any certainty what interest earnings will look like, but certainly they do help us in terms of additional revenues. This is a final look at the property tax cap formula. This is, as of just this past weekend, I can tell you I asked Denise Town to verify the costs, the final costs of the new buses and vehicles we will be purchasing next year. We did receive those final costs yesterday. So they're coming a little bit less, about $20,000 overall, a little bit less. And we did sign a letter of intent for those vehicles to lock in that price now. So even though we won't take any steps to make these purchases until after the budget is approved and after July 1st when the new fiscal year begins, at least we are certain that those prices will be honored as of July 1st. So what I can tell you is that maximum allowable levy-to-levy increase of 4.06, because the cost of the buses is down, is now 4%. So that was just a change from the weekend to today. So I've gone into the comptroller's portal and adjusted that percentage down. I just didn't change it on the slide. I thought I would just share it with you at this time. So where you would see that represented is in the third line from the bottom, the current year capital exclusions. That number is now about $20,000 less than it was a few weeks ago. So in the next slide, we're going to take you through some potential tax levy options. And I just want to point out to you that they tie back to the factors within this tax cap formula. So it's really just an illustration to show you what the impact would be to the district on the budget, on the tax levy, and also on potential fund balance and reserve levels. So I take you through options A through E, and I'll just briefly explain each one. You can see that the proposed budget of $455.2 million is represented in each option, and then the title of each option references which section of the tax cap formula it's referring to. So in the first option, that would be the tax levy, the $96.5 million, if we only levied at the tax base growth factor amount. Option B takes the tax base growth factor plus the 2% allowable growth factor. You do not add them together. They are two separate functions within the formula. So that would give us a potential 2.17% tax levy increase. Option C is just another number I pulled out looking at reasonableness, again, 2%. That gets us the tax-based growth factor plus the allowable growth factor plus a portion of those exclusions balances. So it's the amount of debt service and capital expenditures, i.e. the buses and vehicles that we're purchasing and do not get dollar for dollar aid for. So we're allowed to increase the tax levy for that. Option D is the district's recommendation for the 25-26 school year. This would set a tax levy of a 3% increase, uses almost $794,000 of exclusions. Remember, those exclusions are use it or lose it. So we can use them in this year, but then they go away. So we would start next year with the formula all over again. That would deliver the district about $2.86 million in tax revenue to balance our budget for next year and meet our expenses. And then option E represents the maximum allowable levy limit. Keep in mind, I'm correcting it to 4%, but I do not feel that that is a place the district needs to go for next year. But I am just letting you see what all of the options are. On the very right side of this chart in red, you can see what the potential impact to estimated additional fund balance or reserves would need to be to balance the budget. So this year for 24-25, we appropriated approximately $836,000, I believe. And as we move forward in the spring, we'll be able to let you know whether or not we ended up needing to use any of that or whether we have additional surplus funds. But I am comfortable with that number, and I do think that as the final New York State budget is enacted, as those state aid numbers become finalized, that number could go up or down. So that is an estimated number at this time. Going to the next slide. This just lets us take a final look at proposed state aid for next year. As Superintendent Skills has been pointing out in the last few presentations we have been doing internally, we are expecting a healthy 2.9% increase, or excuse me, $2.9 million or 9.39% increase in foundation aid. Again, hoping that number goes up a little bit, but we're comfortable with that estimate at this time. The additional aids that are reflected on that chart are expense-based aids, meaning they are a function of what we spend each year. So you see that BOCE's aid is down about $567,000 next year. I'm confident that number will go up. I don't think it will, we will necessarily receive that much less. Again, it's a function of how much we spend. We're taking a look at surplus funds that are available now. We're trying to do some additional IT spending this year so that we get that BOCE's aid on those expenses and try to insulate us a little bit from the impact of tariffs and increased costs. And then finally, building aid is down a little bit, and that is just a function of our debt service schedule and how, as we move forward in historical debt service, pieces of building aid tend to fall off each year. This chart represents what total proposed revenues look like for 25-26 based on a proposed budget of $155.2 million. You'll see that the real property tax amount of $98.4 million is carried through from our tax levy option document. That sets the tax levy at the 3% increase. And then the state aid number from the previous page is carried over in the bottom part of the pie graph at the $49.8 million. And then we have other revenues totaling about $6 million. There are some examples in the small call out on the bottom right of the screen of the chart. Again, these fluctuate. These are projected at this time, and we'll continue to look at those numbers over the next few months. And we always need to present a balanced budget to the voters, so our expenses need to equal our revenue. So we would propose to balance the budget with additional fund balance or reserves as appropriate. This is a summary slide that, again, shows you what the district's recommendation is. This budget is sound. It maintains all existing programs and staff, which is something that many school districts in our region are not able to do next year. We feel very fortunate about that, and again, it's been a team effort, we've worked together. But the proposed tax levy increase of 3% is below the maximum allowable levy limit of the 4%. So we are not levying as much as we would be legally allowed to under the law. Superintendent Steele, did you have anything that you'd like to offer?
I just want to echo again what Mrs. Howard says, really has been a team development, and I would absolutely agree that I think we put forth a very responsible budget for our voters. As we talked about last year, we looked at about $836,000. This proposes about $868,000, so it's very comparable to what we did last year in terms of keeping consistent with fund balance. We are able to make some small additions to our existing programs and staff. So when I think about where we've always rooted ourselves in, do we have an excellent program and are we fiscally responsible? I think this budget meets both of those. We are well below the allowable levy limit of 4%, so that means we need the simple majority of just over 50% in order for the budget to pass.
Does anyone have any questions I can answer? Yes, Sam.
So the levy that we're proposing is a 3% increase. What is the actual increase in the tax rate?
That's what I'll work on next.
Okay, we don't have those numbers.
Yes, I'll work on that next.
And then my follow-up question won't make any sense, well, it'll make sense, but it would also be helpful then to have an idea of what is that going to do to the bill of the average tax?
Yeah, that's a really great point, because I always like to point out that regardless of the decision that we make as a district in terms of a tax levy, the impact to the resident is ultimately based on those equalization and assessment rates that are set by the town, and they're not set until July 1st.
Okay.
So in Colony, that number continues to decrease. So that is absolutely an important factor to point out.
It's unfortunate that we have to vote on a budget before we can find out what the rate will be.
So I will make a projection based on where we are right now, but then,
It's
you know,
projected.
as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any more hands up for questions. Hey, thank you so much. You've done a great job for us. You and Ms. Field both used the word responsible. It is a responsible budget, the budget we can be proud of. And I thank you, Mrs. Howard, for your work, and of course the administrative team, and for all of the administrators throughout the district who have been so thoughtful about this process, which is something we all appreciate. So thank you. I would like a motion to approve the proposed budget for the 25-26 year. Mrs. Nardolillo.
I would make a motion to approve the proposed budget for the 25-26 school year as recommended by the budget committee.
Thank you. In a second, Mr. Cannon. I don't think we have any questions or comments, so we're in favor, and yes, everybody's in favor of that. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like a motion to approve the 25-26 property tax report card. Mrs. Albert.
I move to approve the 2025-2026 property tax report card as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thank you. In a second, Mr. Johnson. And I don't think we have questions or comments about that. So all in favor? Thank you very much. I will take a motion to adjourn. I know, Mrs. Jeter, and I'll take a second. Mr. Cannon, and all in favor? I'm waiting for you. Okay, we're adjourned. I don't need that.